If y'all would go ahead and come forward and have a seat, we're about to get started. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Hope y'all had a nice evening wherever that took you and with whoever you spent it with. I hope you got a little rest. I know we're getting started a little bit early this morning, so thank you for doing that. Just kind of go over what's happening this morning, and we'll be moving from after about 10 o'clock. We won't take a break. We'll shift gears and hear back from our Capital Campaign Committee. And then we'll take a however much time break we have and try to get our worship started at right around 10:30. So those of you who are in the procession, whether it's carrying a banner or clergy, if you would then make your way as quickly as you can to make all that happen so that we can stay as much as we can on time. This time I'd like to introduce again to you someone you already know, our missioner for discipleship, Reverend Dr. Joy Blaylock.
Good morning. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce someone that is very dear to my heart. Her name is Dr. Bertice Berry. She received her PhD from Kent University at the age of 26. She taught sociology and statistics at Kent State. And here is where many of you will stop listening, because Dr. Berry's biography of accomplishments can fill up 2 full pages single-spaced. So I want to be more personal about why I have this honor this morning and share how she has described herself once on a podcast. She said, "I'm a sociologist, an author, a mother, a grandmother, a lecturer, a storyteller, and a story curator. I am active in my community in church, where I'm a postulant to become a deacon." Now, while we were all in a tailspin in the initial stages of COVID, Dr. Berry learned skills of working and sharing by asking this question: what do I know and what does my community need? Which is how I found her. My husband and I had updated our wills and pretty much figured out we weren't going to make it through this COVID pandemic thing. And one morning when I got up early, I saw this beautiful face on my iPad screen. And she introduced herself and she said, "I want to tell you a story." And I was hooked. While initially Dr. Berry made these videos for just 5 or 6 friends who needed help and encouragement to get through the pandemic, her presence and gift blossomed from that small band of friends to tens of thousands of people across social media in all different platforms. And it continues to this very day. At the same time, Dr. Berry honed her skills as a seamstress. And along with her family, they made over 30,000 masks for those in need during this pandemic, for hospitals, for businesses, and they shipped them all over the country. The bottom line gift and joy that we have this morning: Dr. Bertice Berry is striving every moment of every day to be whatever and wherever and whenever God calls her to be in this time. And I am so profoundly grateful for her time with us today. May the Holy Spirit make it more than we could ever hope for or imagine. Welcome this morning, Dr. Berry.
How can we have peace in the Middle East if there's none at home? How can we have understanding in the land if there is none for the woman and there is none for the man? Well, there's too much talk about it and too many walk without it. Tell me, where is the love? Where is the God in your life? To my left, a woman abuses her children. To my right, somebody's beating their wife. Tell me, where is love? Where is the God in your life? How can we heal the wounds of the world if we cannot heal our own? Where does this peace on earth begin if not in your home? If not in your home, you are your home. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Bishop. I can't believe y'all keep inviting me to come over here. I ain't even ordained. I got to come in yesterday. I was in Athens, Georgia, not Greece. But if I say Athens, it sounds cool, right? I was in Athens. And I was there with folks from hospice and palliative care, and it was so amazing and beautiful. We got to the airport, which was like an hour, 45-minute drive away, and I had to go on a Zoom meeting with an MDiv student at Yale Divinity, a beautiful Native American woman who grew up with me, and just, I got to watch as she, on her journey. And then I got on the plane and came here, and they were like, dinner's gonna be tonight. It's gonna be at 7:30. I was like, that's 8:30 our time, right? I go to bed at 7. And I got in the room and I did some stretching, and then, well, it wasn't really stretching. It was like I went like this and like that. I was like, let's get together and go. And I had no idea the presiding bishop would be there. And they sat me, they were like, you sit next to him. I was like, It's too late, and I'm awkward when I'm late. And we just had such a great time. It was such a joy-filled time that every time I hear somebody say, oh, you're Episcopalian? Those are the frozen chosen. And I'm like, chosen, yes. Frozen, no. I love this church. I love this church. But I didn't get the chance to grow up in it. I'm young. I'm only a few years. Okay, 10. But in Episcopal years, that's like 2. You mean you're not a cradle Episcopalian? No, and it seems like you haven't grown up out that cradle. There was a woman, I had left church. I was not going back to church. I was done with church. I was sick of church. Church was like the children of a really good-looking guy, but they were bad. And I was like, either he is not their father or he's not a good father. And I knew God was a good father. And there was a woman who was on a board with me, and she would invite me to church every time she saw me for 5 years. She just wouldn't stop. You got to come to our church. It's a wonderful thing. There's some beautiful things happening. And I was like, look, a monkey. And finally, I was like, if I don't go to this church with this woman, she is just not going to stop. Let me just go and get it over with. 10 years ago. So I go, And I walk in and I don't know anything. I don't know the difference between the red book and the blue book. I don't know why people are standing and kneeling. I don't know anything they're saying. I don't know what's happening. But for the first time in my life, I knew I belonged. I knew I belonged. And I said, oh no, I gotta come back. So I'm a sociologist, right? So as a sociologist, I said, I'm going back. And my boyfriend at the time said, you're going back to church? And I said, well, I'm making observations. I couldn't understand why, as a very Afrocentric black woman, I was so drawn to this thing that didn't look like me. And more than that, I couldn't understand how it didn't look like me, but it felt like me. And so I kept making observations. And I came down to this, that people there were either, because it was like this thing, there's this amazing thing, and there are so many people who feel unworthy, who feel like they don't belong, they feel like they don't connect. Why don't more people know about this? And I figured out that you all were either shy or you ain't want nobody else to know. And I realized it was shy. And the other thing that I realized was that Episcopalians are extremely layered. You peel back a layer, and there's another one. I met this beautiful couple this morning. I had on a jacket that I made a couple of days ago, and it's got fabric from Africa. And they walked up, I love the jacket, it's beautiful. Which countries did the fabric come from? And I realized this was a test. And I was like, Ghana? And he goes, yes, Ghana. Where else? Benin on the sleeves. Yes. Yes, near Togo. Yes. And I was like, white man, how you know that? If all I do is look at you, I can't see these beautiful layers. And we don't come into relationship with all these layers because we don't really talk. And we need to learn to talk so we can talk to folks who are lonely. One of the things that I learned in this storytelling is that people want something. We created an online community because people started telling stories back, and I was like, whoa, I got to handle this. And there were people writing long comments that were their stories. Why? Because we are wired for narrative. And when I tell a story, the story in your mind automatically connects. And so they needed to tell these stories. So we created an online group of storytellers and story keepers. And these folks started sharing stories. And then I started hearing from them, I'm better. My therapist said, what are you doing? It's good work. I'm getting back with my husband. I realized he wasn't the problem. I was like, I could have told you that. But it opens us up, and we need to learn to share the stories that we have. That was the thing, that I walked in and the ancestors were there. That I was literally walking in the footsteps of the ancestors. That every time I pick up that red book, I'm connected to something that's bigger than myself, but I was there all along, and it always included me. So we're going to talk about how to talk to anybody and everybody about anything. But before we do that, I'm going to do a thing I call cleaning the filter. Every life has a filter. Sometimes we can't hear because we're listening through our filter. It's like the filter on the dryer. There's a note in the front that says clean before each use. I don't do a lot of laundry. My mother did the laundry. Laundry skips a generation. The filter is there to pull the negative experiences away so you can hold them, look at them, learn from them, and not repeat them. If you do not clean your filter, not only do your clothes not get dry, they don't get clean, and you can literally burn your own house down. So you have to clean the filter, because we get things caught in the filter. My ex-husband got caught in mine. I got married and annulled in the same year. I hope that was, I recognize that feeling. I had to write a country song. It's called If I Shot You When I Met You, I'd Be Out of Jail by Now. I have to tell you the story. I do love country music. One day I was listening to country music. A guy called to ask me out. He was like, I was going to ask you out, but is that country in the background? I was like, yeah. He's like, but you're black. I was like, what do? Turn on country and turn white? What are you talking about? He said, okay, calm down. He used that word that women love to hear. He said, relax. I said, I was relaxed till you told me to relax. He said, okay, who are you listening to? I said, Katie Lang. He said, isn't she a lesbian? I said, and a Canadian. He said, are you a lesbian? I said, are you the alternative? My mama said I can be dumb all by myself. Ain't no need to join up with stupid. So this filter requires that you clean it on a daily basis. At night, I count my blessings. In the morning, as soon as I get up, I process with gratitude. Not gratitude for someone else. I remember from the day before someone who told me I did something for them. And I think we need to allow ourselves to remember that we have an impact on someone else's life. I had a chance to meet with the clergy here this summer. And just sharing that with them. I think sometimes they get caught up on, well, that's just my job. I'm here to help. Yeah, you know, but you have to allow the fact that you have helped to process the next day. Because if not, somebody's going to come up and tell you everything you did wrong. We need to have a Bible study. We've had 3 and you've never attended. Well, how come you didn't tell me? It's in the bulletin. You need that. So take a moment, take a deep breath in, let it out, and remember a time that someone or something, because our pups, our fur babies, often give us the gratitude we need. They came back to say thank you. And just let that charge your cells. There's a story that I like to tell. Janine, is my Kindle in my bag? About a time that I touched somebody's life. Oh, thank you. This is Janine. She is my manager and my sister. And we like to call ourselves Lemonade and Sassafras. Thank you. I was in an airport one day and a little girl was running around. She was running into things. She was running into people. And people were like, somebody needs to get that kid. And she was with her father. And her father was like, somebody needs to get that kid. And I looked over and I saw her running in circles and I recognized it. I have 5 children. I have 5 adopted children. They're all born fetal alcohol, crack addicted. My youngest son is autistic. We found out he's just different. He didn't speak until he was 6. It was right after we saw The Lion King. Yeah, now he talks like James Earl Jones. I am not even kidding you. He's like, cereal, mother. My son chases the ceiling fan and I let him. Because that way I know where he is. One day he was chasing the ceiling fan. He stopped. He says, Mother, do you think at this time, this place, this moment, there's another planet where people are doing what we're doing this time, this place, this moment? I said, oh my God. He's contemplating a parallel universe and chasing the ceiling fan. Oh, he gonna be the bishop. So I see this kid running and stuff. I said, little kid. She said, what, lady? I said, Frozen or Monsters University. She said, Monsters University. She ran over, smashed her little body into mine. I pulled up my phone. I pulled out the movie. We began to watch it. And she was sitting perfectly still. Her father was like, oh my God, thank you so much. I was like, I didn't do it for you. So within a short period of time, 30 minutes, they call for the boarding of the flight. When you're doing the right thing, time flies. So they call early boarding. I get up. I take out my foldable cane. I snap it down. I said, I got to get on the plane. We should have watched this sooner. She's like, that's okay, lady. I had a good time. I've seen it before. Thank you so much. I said, you're so welcome. I get to the jet bridge. The flight attendant the gate agent can't see my cane. She says, this is early boarding. And she can't see my cane. She doesn't know it's there. And the truth of the matter is, before the pandemic, I never said out loud to people, especially people I didn't know. I never told anybody that I had MS. I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want them to look at me as less than. But then I came to realize that every time somebody needed to be healed, Jesus said, what do you want? I'm like, Jesus, the dude is limping. What do you think he wants? We have to say it. I think that we haven't been healed of some of the things in this nation that need to be healed because we haven't said it. And we're afraid to say it out loud. Heal us of systemic racism. Anything to last this long, we need you. We need your help, which is why, as my rector, Michael White, says, that comma is there in our baptismal covenant. I will, with God's help. We need God's help. So the gate agent is like, this is for special need, early needs boarding only. I was like, yeah, here's my cane. She's like, whatever. I scan my boarding pass. I get down the jet bridge. I flop down in my seat. Flight attendant comes over and goes, hi, how are you? I'm like, why are you talking so loud? Oh, the cane. She said, you're in the wrong seat. I said, oh, it happens sometime. I'm looking around, I'm looking at my boarding pass. She said, Coach is back there. I was about to get so angry. And then I heard that little girl running on that plane. Little girl, lady, it's me, that girl, lady. I'm like, I'm over here, kid, what is it? She runs up and hands me this. It's hard to figure out what it is. It's the glove to her doll. I had to do this. Like, what? She said, now you have one and I have one. We sisters. And she ran off. Never saw her again. But I keep this glove on the inside of my Kindle. When I sit down to read, I don't need to see it. I feel that little lump. And in that moment, no matter what I'm going through, I am reminded that I possess the ability to change somebody else's life. It doesn't matter how much pain I'm in, what I feel like I'm going through, what I think somebody did to me. I have the ability to change somebody's life. And I'm not alone. I have this mighty church to help me. So when I cry out and say, pray for this woman and her husband who I met yesterday, and she shared with me that they're having a really horrible time and they're both pastors and they need our prayers, I know that you will. You probably don't look like me when I do it, which is like, yes, we're going to pray. You're like, I will. And that's wonderful because I know it's true. So keep your filter clean. I suffered a head injury because I fall. And I went to the specialist and I said, you're going to have to fix it. And he says, we don't like to use words like fix. I said, make up a word and apply it. He said, well, you've got scripts for everything. You've got a script for walking, a story for talking, a story for walking and talking. And all of your scripts, all of your stories are all confused. And the brain was the master design for the computer. The computer was designed like the brain. It works the same way. And so when a computer crashes, it has to reboot. You have to reboot. I said, oh, okay. I started doing this. He said, are you okay? I said, uh-huh. He said, what are you doing? I said, deleting old files. Look, there's you. You don't need to knock yourself upside your head, but there are some old files that you've been keeping about yourself that you need to delete. There are some stories that you've been telling yourself that you need to forgive. There's some shame that you've been holding that you need to let go of. So how are we going to do this? Why do we do it? Story is powerful. We are wired for narrative. And each person doesn't carry a book. Your life is an entire library. When a person dies, a library closes, but it is our job to keep it open. When we tell those stories, we keep it open. When we continue to lift up the name of someone, we keep that library open. And we have to share these stories so that we can continue to connect. Because on a very scientific level, we're wired for it, but also when we share this story, the love hormone just bonds us. You don't even have to work hard. As we sat there last night, we went from one story to the next, to the next, to the next. When I left, I found out that people were bonded around Andy Griffith. We're like, you love Andy Griffith? I love Andy Griffith. Andy Griffith is good. I was like, what is going on in here? We're connected that way. So when the oxytocin, that love hormone, when I hear a story and you hear a story, we bond, we connect, it starts to rise. We don't have to do anything about that except share our stories, but we don't. And people have been asking me a lot lately, why don't people want to share their stories? Why don't we want to listen? Is it that we don't listen to stories about race because it's just too painful? I'm like, no, that's not it. We don't listen to someone else's story because it's too painful for the story that it reflects. And I don't think we're hiding behind our differences. In fact, our differences are not dividing us. What's dividing us is the need to be the same. Somebody telling us that we have to be the same. That was one of the beautiful things about our faith. Our rector said, just keep in mind that the person kneeling next to you doesn't believe the same way you do. It was by design. The whole via media. You can tell I'm taking my classes seriously. It was designed that way, that we don't have to believe the same, but somehow we think we have to reflect the neighborhood that we're in instead of being a light to the neighborhood we're in. So how do we do this? How do we share? How do we have effective communication? How do we have dialogue with dignity? Well, we're going to do some of that today. And even though we fear our own stories, don't worry, your stories are going to inform you and they're going to connect you and you're going to enjoy it. And I'll help you through it. I'm going to share a story with you and then I'm going to ask you to share a story. There will be rules of engagement. Bishop Russell is hilarious. I keep saying my other bishop, and Bishop Frank Logue was like, what do you mean? I got another bishop. You live in Georgia. I'm like, so the storyteller and the story keeper. The storyteller will tell only their story. We get in trouble when we try to tell someone else's story. When we try to say what that person was thinking, what that person did, what that person was doing. Tell your story. Tell your observations. Tell what happened to you. Just tell your own stories. You're in so much better company with your own stories, but we don't even know them. The story keeper must listen. You're not allowed, well, you are, but you can't. Don't, you shouldn't. To ask questions. No follow-ups. Don't try to get probing. And active listening. We need to engage in some active listening. Last night, presiding Bishop Curry says sometimes if somebody is just droning on, he counts the faces of the people he knows are asleep. And he said they look like this. I think that as a church, we can do a better job at active listening. The priests and the deacons, the clergy spend at least a week, sometimes more, working on a sermon that is layered and powerful and has what you need to take away. And I always listen for at least one thing to take away. And I leave with notebooks filled with what I can take away. But most folks are sitting there like this. And you ask the clergy, they could use your help. Thank you. Because the rest of them were like, yeah, we could. They could use your help. We're not demonstrative. We're not going to clap at the end of a sermon. We're not going to jump up and say hallelujah. We're not going to go, woo, run around the church. Well, some of you might. I'm talking to you. But we can let them know that we're there. And that's the kind of listening I want you to do today. So first I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to invite you to tell a story. I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to tell a story to someone that you don't know. One is the teller, one is the keeper. And you can decide very quickly when you're there what the story is going to be. I'm going to start with a story about my mother. My mother was an amazing woman. She was one of the most wonderful earth mothers on the planet, but that's not the one I grew up with. She was angry, she was alcoholic, she was abusive, she was a single mom with 7 kids, and go figure, I had an attitude. Bigger the insecurity, the bigger the attitude. But my mother transformed, and one day she wrote a long letter and she said, I'm changing, and I want you in my life. I need you in my life. I need you to forgive the things that I've done. And I had been praying like a good Pentecostal all my childhood that one day she would change and give her heart to God. And when she did, like a good Christian, I said, prove it to me. Let's be honest. We don't accept folks saying, I'm changed. We look for proof. And so she did. And the more she did, the more I said, I'm the one in trouble here because I'm not letting go. And this amazing woman, I need her in my life. And she became so amazing that people would fly in all the time when I wasn't even home to hang out with my mom. And then she had a brain tumor, which resulted in 5 heart attacks and 6 strokes over a 2-year period. She would be well and then sick and then well and then sick. And on the day that was her last, she said, I have something for you. I said, Mom, you don't have to give me anything. She said, I do. And you know I don't have any money. And all the good jewelry I have, you gave it to me. I don't think it'd be right to give that back. I looked at Janine and said, yes, it would. She said, I know what to give you, and when you go talk to people who do more for others, share this with them. I said, wow, the morphine drip's working. She said, I'm going to take all of the generational baggage, the hurt, the shame, the things that happened to me, my mother, and her mother before her, and I'm going to pack it up and take it with me to the other side. I'm leaving you a clean slate. When you talk to folks, tell them that me and the ancestors leave them a clean slate, and every day they get to start new. Well, we went home to Delaware to have her memorial service, and after the celebration, during the celebration, because we stayed there and just talked and laughed and sang, a man came up and said, I need to talk to you, and I'd never seen this man before. I was like, okay, and everybody was sharing stories, and he said, no, I need to talk outside. We went outside, and he said, your mother saved my life. I was like, okay. And he said, no, you don't understand. I was in prison. And the thing that caused me to be in prison caused me to be vulnerable to the entire population. And I reached out to your mother for some help. If I could have some money on my books, I could get some protection. I could get some things that were needed, and I could share those and have some protection. And my mother said, I will do this, but you have to admit what you did. And I'm like, whoa. And he told me what he did. And he said she'd send me a money order every month. And I was like, that's where all those money orders were going. And he said, I just needed you to know that. And I said, thank you, sir. And that was powerful. 6 months later, I found the journals that my mother had been writing to me, because I never knew why she was so angry. I never knew why she was so abusive. I never knew why she beat me every day. I had no idea. And then I read those journals and I found out. And I discovered that the things that she had forgiven in that man were the things that had been done to her when she was a child. That's radical forgiveness. That's how she could leave me a clean slate, because she had forgiven what was done to her. So now, I would like you to turn to someone, find someone. It can be someone you know. We'll start off easy. And you've only got 2 minutes. Janine's going to be my timer. You've only got 2 minutes. Effective stories are told quickly. And I want you to share a story of a time you forgave. One is the storyteller. Look at the faces on you. She's holding her breath. She's like, because she knows the story. She knows the story that came to mind immediately. She's like, I can't tell that story. You don't even talk about a woman. Turn to someone, find someone, and share a story of forgiveness. Your time starts now. It's not that hard, Episcopalians. Find a person. Janine, we're going to give them an extra minute because they're finding people. You have 30 more seconds. Time. Without telling the story that you heard, what were the observations? What was the feeling? Anybody, raise your hand if you want to come to a mic. Come to a mic. What was the feeling? What's the observation? Anyone? It did something. Were you the teller or the listener? You were both. That was not the instruction. See, but this is why it works, because we are Episcopalians. And you, sir, are a deacon. Because deacons do whatever they want. A real quick story. I was before the committee, the standing committee, and they said, well, why not a priest? Why not a priest? And I was like, who would want to be a priest when you could be a deacon? And they were like, okay, we're all priests. Did you know that? I was like, well, yeah. And so one guy says, well, you do this thing at your house called Dinner on a Dock. It's where we have a dinner and we watch a documentary. And these young people, most of them are atheist, agnostic, and they come over to my house and they don't realize it, but I'm sharing whatever happened in church that day through a documentary, and we discuss it. And so this guy's brother was one of the people who came, and after a while, he decided that he was going to go on a mission. And he asked if we could contribute to the mission. And I said, yeah. And I told everybody, bring ones. We're going to make him dance for his money. And he did, and we were like doing this. And he was like, And so I shared that story, and I said, see, that's a deacon. A priest can't do that. And somebody's like, well, maybe the priest should do that. I was like, if you want to end up on Dateline. So it did something. Anybody else? Talk to me. Yes. It was hard not to say something. Right. And when we interrupt the story goes somewhere else. And there's a point in that story that that person wants to release something, and we got to let them. 2 minutes doesn't take long. And did the release happen for the teller? Yeah. Yeah. But when we interrupt and it's like, oh, I had it, but you're wired to do that. It's not that you're rude. I tell your story, your mind goes to that story and you want to connect. But sometimes we train that a little bit just to let them get to the point in that story that they really need to release. See, we're not hiding behind our fear, we're hiding behind our shame. I'll talk to you about that in a bit. Anybody else? Yes. Relief. Were you the teller? Yes. Tell me about that relief. There's nothing there anymore when you can forgive. And we hold that and we walk around like this. And then we just do this. Yes. Anyone else? Yes.
That for her. So for her to be able to say, I forgave this, was huge for me because I've been wanting that for her.
It was relief for the listener because she was wanting it for her. The relief that came when she heard, and I forgave her. It does something in the listener as well. Your stories are not lost. There was another hand over here. Yes. You were impacted. Tell me how. Touched with admiration for the person. Yes. You didn't get to finish. Whose fault is that? So, a story is a story that recounts the past. An effective story recounts the past so that it has an impact on the present, giving us hope for the future. Sometimes when we're telling a story, we get marred in the details of the story, when really it's the past, the present, and the future that we have to allow the story to take us. So I'm going to let you finish that story on your way home. I'm just kidding. You will get to finish that story. Yes, I saw another hand. Ooh. It felt like a privilege to have somebody's heart. Let me tell you something, sister. Whew. This is privilege. I don't have a problem with privilege. I have a problem with entitlement. I'm not entitled to your story. But when you give it to me willingly, I have the privilege to go inside myself now. It's powerful. This is true privilege. We keep thinking the stuff that we have is the thing. It's these stories. Those are the gems. This is the gift that somebody would share their life with you. Sometimes they don't finish it, but that they would. Anyone else? Yes. Hope. Woo! We are hopeful people. We're hopeful people. I came back after COVID and I saw this person I hadn't seen in a while. I said, how you doing? You let your hair grow to COVID length. They said, no, something else is going on. I said, okay. I didn't push. And they came into me and leaned in and said, I have surgery in 2 weeks. I said, are you okay? He said, no, I'm okay, but I'm going to be myself. I'm becoming a woman. We hugged and cried and rocked, and I was like, look at us. We standing on the steps of a church that was built by enslaved hands crying over your new breast. I don't have to understand. I get to be hopeful for you to become who you are. need to know what to call, what to do. I just need to love you. Hope. That's what Episcopalians can bring to this world right now. Because folks are feeling anomie, which is a big old sociological PhD word that simply means complete hopelessness. We got it. We have to bring it. Anyone else? Yes. 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 It was comforting. It was comfortable. Everybody was releasing something. That's the oxytocin. The doc can tell you that. Wherever there's an Episcopalian, there's a doctor sitting between two lawyers. It's comforting. The same hormone produces adrenaline and the anxiety, but if you just allow it to happen, that oxytocin floods in and it bonds. Yes. There was another hand. Yes. Connection. It bonds us. You felt connected. Both of them realized how bad they had been to their moms, and both realized they needed to say they were sorry. What are the odds of the Holy Spirit putting them together? Pretty good odds. You weren't that bad. Oh, you were bad. Oh, you were bad. I could tell right now. Holy Spirit just told me that one was a bad one. But just the realization of, you know what? We didn't realize how hard their struggle was. And seeing that reflected off of one another. Anyone else? Yes. You have the same sister? Papa was a rolling stone. Tell me about the sisterhood. Wow. When she was describing her sister, it hit her, I've got the same sister. What are the odds of that? What are the odds of that realization and that comforting knowing I'm going through this we have the same sister. There's someone way in the back. Yes. The photographer told me that there was somebody in the back. Now, don't be making me look. Yes. There's a teenager who can run the mic. Oh, there you go with them young knees. You don't even know you got knees. Look at him running, showing off. Just running like, oh, I'm not even breathing hard. I got on a mask and I'm running.
Admiration. It's on admiration.
It gave you admiration. That's a big word. That's a big word. My mother used to say, people who need to be impressed haven't done anything impressive. But when you can admire someone, that's a big word. Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next story so that the keeper gets a chance to tell the story. But it's not going to be the same question. And you know why? Because usually when someone's telling a story, we're listening in our mind for and preparing our answer. So when we do this, when you go back to your congregations and you do this, make sure you change up the question. Just takes 2 minutes to make this happen. I'm going to tell you a story. There's a man named Gordon Varnado that goes to my church. Gordon Varnado, everybody in Savannah knew Gordon. He dressed like Batman and, not DeFusky, he dressed like Oglethorpe and walked around Savannah. And he was great, and he always had a joke. And he would turn around and go, I got a joke for you. Like, okay, Gordon, church is about to start. One day I've got my granddaughter in my arms. She was about 2 at the time. And he's got, oh, I got a joke for you. I said, go ahead, Gordon. He said, you heard about the kidnapping? I said, no. He said, kid woke up. I said, did they catch him? He said, kid woke up. I said, did they catch him before the kid woke up? Did they catch him before the kid woke up? He said, kid woke up. I said, did they catch him? Was it in Savannah? Do they know where this man is? He said, kid woke up. You're supposed to be smart. And I was like, oh. And every Sunday, up until he died last year, I would say, Gordon, tell me about the kidnapper. And he'd turn around and go, kid woke up, and because that first time he told me the joke, I was in so much fear for what might happen that I couldn't hear the joy that was happening. So, who was the story keeper the last time? Raise your hand. If you were the listener, you were the keeper. If you're the keeper, you're the curator. You're like, I know you did both. Okay, this time I want you to tell a story about a time when you were afraid. Your time starts now. And Janine, just add another minute because they're moving about too. Thank you. Sissy, come here. It's good, right? How much more? How much more? Okay, just notify me when there's 30. 30 more seconds. And that is time. That is time. That is time. That is time. Okay, you weren't done in time, so I'm going to ask you to come to the mic and sing a song. I'm just kidding. A dance? She said she'd like a dance. Wait a minute, I saw you still talking too. Just kidding. Observations. Without telling the story that you heard, what observations did you have? Talk to me. Yes, in the back. Call, go ahead, young knees. Oh. Say again. Resolution. Woo! That's a big word. And a big voice saying it. Resolution. Resolution, were you the teller or the keeper? Keeper. Woo! When you can tell a story so effectively that someone else feels resolution in their heart, you've touched them. Did they memorize scriptures? Were they, breaking down Thomas Cranmer? No, they were telling their own story. You have this within you. Anyone else? Observations? Yes, 2 over here. You were terrified by the story. It drawed you in like a podcast, like a Law and Order podcast. And did it come to an end? But a good story where someone else is afraid will pull you in. That's why these murder podcasts are so popular with millennials, because we ain't scare them enough. Just kidding. Yes, I'll come to you next.
I would have to say revelation.
Revelation.
Yeah. It was an aha moment
Were there 2 candles and you had to be there?
It told me something that I had thought was going on, and it was a relief to know that was shared and validated, maybe? I hate that word.
Wow, so
Yeah.
revelation and validation. That's big, in 2 minutes. Yes, over here, in the obligatory red jacket. A lack of resolution. Tell me why.
It was a story about fear that didn't really resolve, and that is analogous to fears that are ongoing.
Yes, yes, yes. Any stories in the Bible that don't really resolve? What do we do with that? How do we help people have some faith and hope? If I tell you the end of everything, there's no reason to keep believing. We won't always get the answer that moment. Yes, there's another hand over here. Yes.
You're so fixated on someone else's eyes when normally when you tell a story, when you tell a story, you see someone's whole face.
She said she was fixated on his eyes. She could only see his eyes. And by watching his eyes, the eyes were telling so much, and it was a great observation. Babies born during COVID are super smart because they've been reading their eyes. We're like this, hey, you baby, hey, you baby, hey, you baby. And they're like, get away from me. Yes.
I felt enlightened with a new possibility for a resolution for myself for the future.
That's big. Can you say that on the mic, please? 1, 2, 1, 2.
I felt enlightened for the possibility of a possible resolution for myself in the future.
That's hope. That's faith. That's believing. That's keep going. We're going to get there. That's it. Those who have an ear, let them hear. Those who can believe, believe. I don't need everybody, just us sexy people. I had a song flashback. I just need the believers. Yes, all the way in the back. Oh, go ahead, Vanna. You can run. No, that's Oprah. Oh, look, she showing off. I can run too. She was doing like this. She was like, I can run.
So admittedly, I was talking to someone that I know fairly well, but the reminder that even when we are the story keeper for someone we know well, remaining open to learning something new, and how does that deepen our relationships?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. There's a woman who has told me the same story about 5 times, and I listen because every time there's going to be a detail that I need in the moment. I don't say, you told me. She's going to drop another pearl in there that I need in that time. Sometimes the stories are right for that time. Sometimes they're for the future, and you'll reflect back on it. And just because you know someone and you think you know their stories, there are aspects of it that you need to know in that moment. Someone else, yes. Can I just take, before you speak, let me just say, Bishop Russell, didn't you tell me people were not going to be talking a lot? They don't do that. My liege. Yes. Woo. The universality of story. Ooh. Anybody know a story, how universal they are? I got hands going up everywhere. Let me go to you, and then I'm going to go to you, and then I'm coming back over here. Yes. God is our rock in times of need. You better preach. Yes. Woo. Sometimes that's all I need to know. And somebody's story tells me that. Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. Vulnerability. You became vulnerable listening? Both sides. Yeah. And you don't look like the kind of person that likes to be vulnerable. He said, thank you. That was not a compliment, it was an observation. Yeah, but we have to let that happen. We know Brene Brown says in that vulnerability is when you drop the shame. And she knows that because she's an Episcopalian. In that vulnerability, somebody else's story can let us be that. You don't always have to be the one telling it to feel it. Yes, yes.
We cheated. 4 of us were talking, were speaking and sharing, and we're not combined. However, we found a commonality of our story.
He said they cheated. 4 of them were talking at the same time. But they found a commonality in their story. No, sir, you just were hearing yourself. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm from a family of 7. Oh, we know how to talk at the same time in here. And you will find in those moments you saying the same thing, you feeling the same way. I didn't know you felt that way. Yes, I felt that way. I didn't know. I had no idea. One of these times he's going to follow the rules, though. Anyone else? Yes.
I'm a talker, hence why my hand was up. It was challenging for me because I want to connect to the story, and my way of connection is to add in my experience that matches that. And so I realized something in myself that I was having to bite my tongue so that I could really, truly listen to him because I wanted to share my commonality to his story.
We need you. When you found yourself needing to jump in, it's because your brain doesn't need any training to find those points of connection. Yes, you're kind of like Hermione, but that's not the point. We need you because you automatically connect. Some people have the ability to do that. Now, waiting those 2 minutes allows that person to go deeper into that story to find the place for you. And then you get to share, right? But we need you. We need you like leading the crowd of connection. That's a gift. Don't bite your tongue. Well, do, or join this group of 4. But just allow that to be, okay? It's a gift. Yes, there was another hand. Yes. Oh, can you go back there first? I saw them first, and then come up here. Yes. He's coming with the mic. Appreciation. You felt appreciation. You hear all of this that we're feeling in these 2 minutes? Appreciation for the story. Yes.
continue to work through that.
Can you say that again on the mic? Because that was beautiful.
I just felt a real compassion for the situation that she was in, but an admiration for the way she was able to come through that so strongly.
Yeah, it allows us to feel compassionate even for the guilty. Anyone else? Yes.
I felt honored and loved that she would share that with me.
She felt honored and loved that was shared with her. This is powerful stuff, people. This is very powerful stuff. I'm going to go on to the next one. I've got, how much time do I have left, Janine? 20 minutes. Okay, good. I've got 2 more that I want to do. Story, I was in the airport, and I had on a colorful blouse and skirt, and, I was just trying to decide what I was going to have for breakfast. And I was in the Sky Club, and Sky Club, if you fly a lot, you get free food and free drinks, and I don't drink, so I get the food. I'm just kidding. So I'm there, and I'm like, am I going to have a hard-boiled egg, or should I have a bagel? Oh, if I have a bagel, should I have peanut butter on it, or should I have butter and jelly? Oh, and I'm doing this in my mind, and I hear, where are the spoons? And I was like, oh, okay. So if I have a hard-boiled egg, I can actually wrap up the hard-boiled egg and take it. Where are the spoons? If I put peanut butter, I could put peanut butter and jelly on it. What if, and then finally, you hear me? I said, where are the spoons? You know what? Just get your manager. And I said, oh, she's talking to me. And I looked up and I was like, what? She said, I said, where are the spoons? And I said, I'm sorry, I don't work here. And I got the bagel and the egg. And I sat down, I was laughing so hard. I was just like, I was calling people. She was like, where are the spoons? And blah, blah, blah. So she comes over and said, I'm so sorry. Your blouse is so pretty. I just thought it was the uniform. And I was like, You thought black lady must work here. But that's okay. Drop that shame and keep going. I laughed. That has become, in my family, we just go, where are the spoons? My daughter will walk in the house and she goes, Mother, where are the spoons? So take 2 minutes and tell a story about a time you made an assumption but were wrong, or someone made an assumption about you and they were wrong. A story of assumption. Getting a little tougher, ain't it now? The keeper becomes the teller. Story of assumptions. A story of assumptions. 30 seconds. 30 more seconds. That is time. That is your time. Can you tell I like doing that? Time. Time's up. All right, observations about assumptions, stories of assumptions, observations, yes. Yes. Wait. We need the mic, because whenever a story starts with, I'm not proud of this, everybody needs to hear this goodness.
This isn't easy. In my business, customers come in, and I greet them all the same way, at least I try to. But very rarely, occasionally, a young black man will come in with his pants not to where I would think they would be suitable. Square baseball cap. Looks like a gangster, I guess. I don't know. And
that's what TV told you, yeah.
That's right. And so I'm thinking, this is going to be trouble. And I promise you, without exception, they've always addressed me like I was an officer and they were in the Army. Good morning, sir, how are you? Could you tell me about your product? And I feel awful.
Okay, the next place we're going to move into shame, but I need you to put it down right now, because that shame keeps us from moving forward. You made the wrong assumption about that young man. You were wrong. You learned from it. The next time somebody comes in with the baseball cap and the pants hanging, give them something free, because you owe them. I love you. I love you for sharing that. My heart needed that. We all did. Thank you for your bravery. Now, what kind of business do you have? I do, but I want my policy free. It's called reparations, my brother. Observations.
When I started as a deacon, our training was supposed to be in the hospital, and I was on a cancer floor, and so going in to visit patients, there was a young black man in the hospital, and I said to him, "You're looking forward to going home, aren't you?" And he said, "Not one bit." He said, "I'm homeless. They let me stay on this floor because there was a bed open, and I get my 3 square meals every day here. I don't look forward to leaving at all. I live under the bridge." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry." But as a deacon going to make visits, you can you're one of the people that don't ask them for anything. You don't need to take their temperature. You just visit. So I got to just sit there and talk to him for a little while, and I said, "That's my bad. I've just put my foot right in my mouth." But making the assumption that he wanted to get out of the hospital, I would have assumed that I couldn't wait to get out of the hospital.
Yes.
But he loved being in the hospital,
Right.
because that hospital let them, tried to keep people in as long as they could, if they could.
Thank you. Thank you. The assumption that everybody wants to go home. Now, I had an assumption about the story because you said he was a young black man, and I thought it was going to have something to do with race. Sometimes we only tell the race of the other person when we have the privilege to think that other person needs to be identified. Does that make any sense? That's a story. Stories of assumption can go all across races. But what you did was took us to class. That was a story of class. That the privilege of being well, able-bodied, going someplace because you're well enough to go is a privilege, and we assume that everybody is wanting the same thing. That is a bigger mistake that we make. It's bigger than the race. Everybody's not looking for the same thing, but everybody wants to feel like they belong. And belonging, I don't call it inclusion because the doc will tell you an inclusion is something you really need to cut out. Belonging is me getting to be who I am and feeling welcome in that. Because nothing takes more energy from me than me not being myself. And the fact that the Episcopal Church embraces me being the whack woman that I am is just so amazing to me. Thank you for this. Because we can't make assumptions that everybody, that's the difference between equity and equality. Equality, give everybody the same thing. Equity is give everybody what they need. He needed to stay there. Assumptions, talk to me. Observations, yes. Oh, he didn't stop running. Oh, look at him showing off. I still got energy. I'm young. You lost your knees and hips. Well, the joints.
I did raise my kids with the 4 words of everyone has a story. And my job and my career has always been, I'm the listener and I have to listen to deep personal stories. And I'm always amazed by how I am judged by my title, my clothing, everything about me physically, that their story is unique and like worse. And it's not my job to one-up them or anything, but those people that look like they've got it all together, they got stories, They don't all come from privilege and everything was rosy. And that's something that I think is lost sometimes when you're in your own self, that everybody, including your listener, has a story.
Thank you for that. This is where the rubber meets the road. When I came into the discernment process, everybody said, what are you going to do? We'll have a PhD in stratification, the unequal distribution of wealth, power, and prestige in a society. I thought that it would be around that. Somebody on the discernment committee was sitting there like nodding. I think something with this story thing. And I was like, what is this? I got home that night and got a letter from someone saying, you have no idea how much I needed this. Everybody looks at my life and thinks it's perfect, thinks everything is okay, but I'm dying inside and I have no one to tell, and now I have this story group. It showed me that sometimes when we think about the least, the lost, the lonely, the lacking, we think that just looks one way, and it doesn't. Thank you. Thank you for that. I wrote my first novel. I wrote a book, kind of autobiographical. It was a bestseller, and I got a deal to write a novel. It's called Redemption Song. It's about a couple who meet in a bookstore. They both want the same book. It's a one-of-a-kind slave's narrative. The woman who owns the bookstore says, I have the book, you have to read it together. They don't want to read it together. They think they're on different paths, different missions. They don't want to spend this time together. She says, I have the book. It's one of a kind. You can read it, but you have to read it together. So they give in, and they do. And it talks about a woman who lived on a plantation, horrible existence. In the midst of the horror, she was brutally assaulted all the time. She finds love. Her love is sold away. He has children by someone else. She's brutally raped by the slave owner, has a child. Her child is sold away. The man who's free says, unless I'm with her, I'm not free. So he goes back into slavery to purchase her freedom, which he does, but he's killed the next morning. That's okay, that's the first 6 pages of the book. She writes into the future how someday their descendants, someone from his line, someone from her line, will find each other and complete the love. The two who've walked into the bookstore are those descendants. Every story you encounter is the first 6 pages. And as one of the characters in another book said, if you ain't dead, you ain't done. And even dead don't mean done when we keep those stories alive. Well, I write this book. It's a huge bestseller. People are like celebrating the book. People want to do it as a movie, blah, 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 blah. I write more books. I keep writing because tuition. And then I find out the day before my mother died, and I should have known she was going that day because there was a Bonanza marathon. My mother loved Bonanza. And when she went to sleep, we were like, good, change the channel, change the channel. And I turn it to PBS, and there's a story. And the name sounds familiar. I know it immediately. Because in that book, I give the name of that evil slave owner the name John Hunn. Because I grew up hearing that John Hunn owned the plantation that my family lived on during the period of enslavement. So I'm going to get back at him in this book. But that PBS special says the name John Hunn, and he was one of the most fearless abolitionists that ever lived. Oops. And I'm like, John Hunn was an abolitionist? My mother wakes up and says, I told you he was a nice man. I'm like, Mom, there's a big gap between nice man and abolitionist. He's this abolitionist. I got it wrong. I got my own story wrong. I got the story of history wrong because I was painting everything black and white. Everything is not black and white. It's all of that and everything in between. And if we only count the evildoers, we miss the people who did the right thing. We have to tell the whole story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it starts with the good. So I wrote another book about John Hunn, about how he and my great-great-grandfather would go down and rescue people, including Harriet Tubman. They supplied the shoes. And they would get them from the lower parts of Maryland and Virginia up to the Philadelphia Commission. And then John Hunn was sued and lost everything. And he said, I will give my life and limb. And my great-great-grandfather, John Henry, sued to get his freedom back because when they sold his property, they sold him as well. And he took the name, he said, I was unlawfully took. And he won. And he took the name Freeman. And that's how my family became Freemans. He wanted everybody to know he was a free man. That's a bigger story. And in our own lives, we stop in the middle of the story. And we hide behind so much shame. I just finished the first novel since I discovered that 10 years ago. Because I was so ashamed of myself that I couldn't write fiction again. But I have. And it's a book that brings us all in. Don't stop in the middle of your stories. Don't stop sharing. Don't stop connecting. Don't stop loving. In that book, I borrow a passage from Redemption Song and I bring it forward, and it says this: my children of grace, you have to start this family over. It's on to you to set things straight. Y'all done traded one slavery for another when you turn your back on God. You ain't free to do what you want to do. You free to do what you're supposed to do. Take care of the children and the old folks. Just because they don't come from you don't mean they ain't yours. Learn your history. Love, forgive, but never forget. Stand ground because a bigger change than I've seen is coming, but you are the beginning of that change. But be careful. Change never come without struggle, and joy never come without pain. In your lifetime, you'll see the struggle, but you have each other to get through it. Don't let the little things keep you from doing the big ones. Others will try to stop you, but they can't, because this thing is already moving. Everybody who looks like you is not on your side, and everybody who don't ain't against you. Talk to God and never stop loving. The more I write, the more I see, the more I see, the more I know everything's going to be okay. I can feel it. So I'm leaving my pages here with you. It's my time now, and I feel that too. Learn from the past that's yours. Take the gift of what I've seen and use it for love. Here's the recipe of life, the road to freedom. Freedom ain't just about living free. It's about being free, then turning around and set somebody else free. The only problem is this: the chains on your wrist ain't as strong as the ones on your mind. So learn to love and strive to love, because babies, we ain't got time for nothing else. I love you. I appreciate your stories. It has been a privilege and an honor and a gift to be with you. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Now you know why I wanted y'all to meet her. And please,